This video is brought to you by HAVIT. Today we're checking out the HAVIT H655BT Bluetooth headphones. Now this is a new brand to me. I thought I'd give it a go. So I'll be scoring and ranking them in 10 categories against 9 other headphones. You can also customize the scoring with my free spreadsheet linked below. And this entire review is not influenced by HAVIT at all. They're watching this video the exact same time that you are. Before we started this deal, they know my exact review process and they were still willing to sponsor the video, which most brands are just not willing to do, so respect. Now the retail price here is $59 US. You can get them closer to $50 with my code linked below. But now let's get into category 1, build quality and fit. So you can get these in blue, black or beige. And the design is great. It's actually the nicest looking headphone that I've tested. It's a nice, simple look that I think most people will like. The quality of the plastics are not amazing. It does feel a bit cheap, but this does mean the headphones are incredibly light at only 244 grams. And the comfort is solid with just enough cushioning on the headband. And the ear cups are pretty spacious. They could be a tad deeper though. I have pretty large ears, so they do touch on the inside slightly, but if you have a normal ear size, you should be fine. There is a bit of clamping force, but again, I have a pretty large head. Normal heads, you should be fine. But I think it's better to have more clamping force than you need because you can just stretch it out on a box. And if you do like to use your headphones when training, better clamping force means the headphones are gonna stay in place a lot better. So these work great when training. So overall, pretty solid stuff. The only real downside here is that you can't fold the headphones in. So storage, you're gonna have to just lay them down flat. And you don't get a hard case or a soft case included. But still, overall score here is gonna be a 7 out of 10 for build and fit. Now, category 2 is battery life. And you get a seriously impressive 69 hours with noise cancelling on, which is the highest that I've ever seen, and that goes up to 76 hours with noise cancelling off. That's gonna be at 50% volume though. You don't get any fast charging of the headphones here, so it does take 2 hours to charge the headphones from dead to full. And they're just charged via USB-C. So the main thing here is the solid battery life, so they're getting a 9.5 out of 10. Now, category 3 is controls. And you get physical buttons on the right ear cup, which have a nice click to them. You can control everything, including volume, play, pause, track forward and back, your voice assistant, noise cancelling controls, and you can double tap the noise cancelling button to turn on the low latency mode. So you get all the basics that you need. They're getting a score of 8 out of 10. The only thing missing here is that you get no ambient control switching. So when you're pressing that noise cancelling button, you have to cycle between noise cancelling on, transparency mode, and then noise cancelling off. Since you don't get any app support, you can't customize this in the app, where most headphones allow you to do this. But now category 4 is connectivity. And you're just getting Bluetooth 5.3 here with SBC and AAC as your codecs. You can also plug in via an auxiliary cable, which they include. I'll talk more about the quality of that later though. And you do get multi-point connection, so you can connect 2 devices to the headphones at the same time. And it also has multi-point takeover. So if you play your media on one device, it's automatically gonna pause on the other device. It just takes a couple of seconds for that audio to switch over. And you also get that low latency gaming mode. So in my quick test, it really did bring that latency down to a much better result, especially if you're into fast reaction games like shooters. So generally 400 milliseconds is fine for casual games. You do wanna get closer to 200 milliseconds for games like shooters. So again, you get everything you need here. They're getting a score of 9 out of 10. Now onto category 5, call quality. And I run through 3 tests here, just a quiet room, some simulation loud kid noise because it's quite sporadic voices, and a simulation windy city with construction, which is an incredibly hard test for the headphones to do well at. And the H6BT are getting a score of 7.5 out of 10, so actually up there with the best of the best. Since the average score here, I do round up to the nearest half, so they're actually tied second. If you want to check out the spreadsheet, you got the exact score for all the headphones in each test. Now you can't mute your microphone using the controls when you're on a phone call, but you can actually switch between noise cancelling on and off and transparency. Where most headphones don't allow this, it's only the Soundcore, Soundpeats, and now HAVIT that allow you to do this. But here are some sound samples. I'm gonna compare it to the QCY H3, which is currently the overall best ranked for call quality.
All right, here's the call quality of the HAVIT H655BT in a quiet room.
All right, here's the call quality of the QCY H3 in a quiet room.
All right, now we're gonna see how the microphones block out some simulation kit noise.
All right, here's the HAVIT HC655BT with some simulation loud kid noise.
All right, here's the QCY H3 with some simulation loud kid noise.
All right, now I've got some simulation construction noise, city noise, and some wind noise.
All right, here's the H655BT with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind.
All right, here's the QCY H3 with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind.
All right, now category 6 is usually app customization and extra features, but like I mentioned, you don't get any app support. So the main issue here is you're not going to be able to get firmware updates down the track, and all the headphones on my ranking do have app support. And you can't customize your controls, you don't get EQ customization, but like a workaround that is you can just use external apps, mainly beneficial on Android. So just something to keep in mind. And I know this is a cheaper headphone, but there really should be app support for pretty much any headphone at any price in today's market. But now category 7 is noise cancelling, and how I test my noise cancelling, I chuck on my soundbar and I test some crowd noise and some plain noise. So I'm getting high, middle, low, consistent, as well as some inconsistent sounds. And here's the scoring for both tests, as well as the average for both tests. So the H6BT is getting a solid 7 out of 10. Now you only get one mode, so there's no customization with the noise cancelling. There's also no wind noise reduction, and the microphones do pick up wind quite easily with the microphones at the back top part of the headphone and close to the front of the headphone. So if you're outside on a windy day, there is going to be a little bit of wind that gets picked up. But they do have barely any white noise hiss with noise cancelling on. And when it comes to EQ shift, so this is how your sound quality changes with noise cancelling on compared to noise cancelling off compared to transparency mode. And it's good to see here that with noise cancelling and transparency, the sound is pretty much the same. When you turn noise cancelling off, there's about a 15% bass increase. So slightly on the higher side, but not too bad. And again, if you want to check all these small details with all the headphones, it's in my spreadsheet. Free to download, link below. Now, category 8 is the transparency mode. And I was pretty impressed with it. The overall clarity is nice. It's good enough so you can actually hear a conversation or talking to someone close up, or like watching a video on your TV or your computer or something like that. It's definitely not the most natural sounding, so it is a bit brighter than what you would naturally hear, but being able to pick up like noise in the distance, like traffic noise and like things like birds chirping and wind, it does quite well at that. Like the noise cancelling, there's also barely any white noise hiss. Even in a quiet room, it's barely noticeable. It does have a slight amount of occlusion. I rate it about a 3 out of 5. So when you speak yourself, your own voice doesn't sound as natural as it would with your headphones off. But still, the overall score here is an 8 out of 10, so up there with the best. All right, category 9 is sound extras. So here we're talking about sound leakage, volume, listening with an auxiliary cable, and low volume listening. So starting with sound leakage, I test all the headphones at 80 decibels. I chuck the headphones on my pretty advanced Star Track box, and then I just listen to how loud the headphones leak the sound, and they're getting a score of 10 for this. So the higher the score, the less sound leakage. So you're all good when it comes to sound leakage, basically. Now here are the results I got in my max volume test. So I'm just getting over 94 decibels with the H6BT. Not incredibly loud, but when I had the headphones on at 100%, it was uncomfortably loud. It's definitely in hearing loss territory. Anything above 85% volume, that's easily loud enough. And when it comes to low level listening, these actually sound quite nice because it's quite a bass boosted tuning, since naturally we hear less bass and treble at those lower volumes. So I don't really score this one because it's kind of hard to score, but basically they sound decent at those low volumes. And finally, when it comes to listening with an auxiliary cable, you can only do this with the headphones powered off. So you can't use your noise cancelling, your transparency, or the controls when you have the auxiliary cable plugged in. And for most headphones with an aux cable, the sound becomes very muddy and messy, where with the H6BT, it's kind of the opposite. The bass is reduced quite a bit, so the sub bass is a little bit lacking, but the actual clarity of the treble stays the same. And if anything, the mids sound a little bit better. So that's definitely a win there for your aux listening. And with all this, they're getting a score of 9 out of 10 for sound extras. But now onto the final round, sound quality. And just being up front here, the stock tuning you get isn't great, but it does have a lot of potential. The only real issue with it is that the bass is a bit bloated and muddy. So there's just a little bit too much of that upper bass and kind of mid bass. So this does drown out the mid range, so the vocals are a bit recessed. But the treble is pretty decent. You get some nice sparkle and some nice detail, even with that over the top mid bass. And it doesn't get harsh at all. So this is where having some app support and an EQ in the app would make it just a lot easier to tweak the sound, because if you use an external EQ, I just played around with the Spotify EQ. I think it's just 5 bands. It's a very basic EQ. But if I bring down that 150 Hertz range and boost the mid slightly, the sound is massively improved. It's much cleaner with the bass. The vocals are brought forward slightly. You still get that decent treble. Overall, it's just a much better sound. With that EQ customization, it's getting closer to a 7.5, potentially even an 8 out of 10 for sound quality. So if you're on iOS, it's not very convenient to EQ because you can only do it in certain apps, where if you're on Android, you can use an app like Wavelet, and that'll actually save it to the headphones, so it'll work with all the apps on your phone. So with the lack of EQ customization, I do need to give them a 6 out of 10 for sound quality. But that wraps up all 10 categories. And before we go into the final score, this scoring system and ranking system doesn't mean much if certain categories matter more to you. So that's why I created my custom scoring spreadsheet, free to download, linked below. So on there you get every score, notes for each score, all the specifications, a core quality section with the score of each of those tests. But it's a personalized scoring where you can have some fun. So just fill out a number in the importance column and that will multiply the entire category. And that'll change the total score for all the headphones. But here's the final scoring. So the H655BT are finishing in last place with 71 out of 100, keeping in mind they got a score of 0 for app customization and extra features. So if I was to jump back into the spreadsheet and get rid of that category completely, they still finished second last, but it's pretty close between the bottom 4 or 5 headphones there. So I'd say these are only really worth it if you know you don't need app support and you can just use an external EQ if you're on Android. Because if you do that, you can get them sounding very impressive for the price. So overall, the H655BT have a solid base. They've got a very standout design. It's really just the app support and just tweaking up a few things that will really let them stand out in this pretty crowded budget headphone market. Now, if you want to see my top 7 headphone video, I'll link it up right here. So be sure to check that out. In the meantime, stay picky and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.